آله وصحبه ومن والاه. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Again, inshallah, we're continuing with our journey with the Quran, and I want to re-emphasize the importance of putting things back or in perspective, which means that we go back to emphasize the Quran and focus on the Quran, and then use it as a reference for the Sunnah, not the other way around. So the Hadith, even if it is in the Sahih, if it contradicts a very basic principle or fundamental principle of Islam, it's much easier for us to say that Bukhari might have made a mistake rather than twisting the whole Islam to fit a Hadith. Because, again, it's human efforts. I think all the scholars agree that all the Hadith, including that the ones that are in the Sahih, are dhanni thubut. There is none that is qat'i thubut like the Quran. Dhanni thubut means it is not 100% sure that Rasul has said it. Nobody can say that about any Hadith almost. And for the mutawatir, the Hadith that was narrated by many people, via many people, like a chain, and every stage of are very few. Very few Hadith are mutawatir. Mutawatir means that it was narrated by four or more to four until it was documented. And that's, I think, one of the biggest mistakes that was made after the mistake of freezing ijtihad is when some scholars took that because hadith is sahih, so we have to justify it, we have to find a way to justify it. And even if it takes to twist the interpretation of the verse of the Quran, and by the way, that was done more than once and repeatedly with many verses, of course, out of good intention, but it was big mistake. Even stop freezing ijtihad, by the way, was out of good intention. People were afraid that Islam will be spoiled by bid'ah and by wrong ijtihad, so they thought that freezing it is the best way to avoid that. And of course, that was a big mistake. It's like the mistake of accepting oppressive regimes for stability. Major blunders were committed in our history, and they were at the roots of where we are now. These are some of them. Freezing ijtihad, justifying oppression in the name of stability, because there is a ruler who's going to bring law and order and stability, so we can tolerate oppression. And then this idea of the lack that turning things upside down rather than the Quran is the essential. Everything else has to be evaluated against the Quran. Now we went from the Quran, neglected, focus on the Hadith, and then neglected, focus on the Torah and the books of fiqh of the book, and that's very, very bad. So we ended up with something that is very rigid, very frozen, very irrelevant, did not keep up with the changes and progress in life, that is keep putting more problems or new problems on our table, on our plate, that requires ijtihad. So inviting Muslims to go back and study the Quran and individually and collectively and reflect on it and try to extract from it spiritual fuel and energy and also guidance. Quran is full of that, full of spiritual motivation. It really gives you an amount of energy and motivation and resolve and determination, and also guidance. Basically, you become someone who has that furqan, the ability to distinguish truth from falsehood, and leverage the flexibility of Islam, like we said about Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anhu, just few years in the same place, in the same area, and just few years after the death of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was making major ijtihad, yani. Like probably if someone does that today, that probably will be called kafir, yani, or be yani, someone who makes ijtihad about clear-cut verses in Quran, just because that there is that balance between the literal meaning of the Quran and the essence and the maqasid. And if sticking to the literal meaning is going to defeat the purpose of the Islam, then we shouldn't do that. And the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he gave us something, and we're going to see today also, inshallah, a way to evaluate things. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam told Aisha that لولا أن أهلك حديث عهد بالإسلام. And the meaning of the hadith, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if it was not that I'm afraid or concerned that the iman of the people is still fragile, I would have destroyed the Kaaba and rebuild it at its original dimension, because at certain point in time, Kaaba was destroyed by a flood and the people did not have enough money, so they built it smaller than its original size. So Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was eager to do this, but he balanced out, he weighed the advantage and disadvantage, and then decided not to do it. As we'll see today about the khamr al-maisr, gambling and alcohol, that فيهما يسألونك عن خمر والميسر فيهما إثم كبير ومنافع للناس وإثمهما أكبر من نفعهما. That's yes, that people can get some benefits in these, but the harm outweighs the good, yeah, or the benefit. طيب, now we are in the verse, we finished to 10, so to 11. بقرة 2:11. سل بني إسرائيل كم آتيناهم من آية بينة. First of all, I'm going to just quickly review the last verses, which I said I consider them foundational, fundamental. ومن الناس من يشري نفسه ابتغاء مرضات الله والله رؤوف بالعباد يا أيها الذين آمنوا ادخلوا في السلم كافة ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين. 2:07 and 2:08. 2:07 and 2:08 are, but there is but there is also kind of man who gives his life away to please Allah, and Allah is most compassionate to his servant. You who believe, enter wholeheartedly into submission to Allah and do not follow in Satan's footsteps, for he is your sworn enemy. If you slip back after clear proof has come to you, then be aware that Allah is Almighty and wise. These are really, very strong verses. So it tells us that basically that's the deal on the table, that you surrender completely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You dedicate your life to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You strive all your life to make it all dedicated to Allah. Basically, you start living for Allah, not for yourself, and you will be whatever Allah expects you to be. You will be doing whatever Allah expects you to do. That's the meaning of being servant of Allah. من الناس من يشري نفسه ابتغاء مرضات الله. Of course, before that, it told us that the verses tells us about the people who may deceive you. And that's very important for us to remember. We talked about that we should not follow somebody blindly, because that's ibadah. ومن الناس من يتخذ من دون الله أندادا يحبونهم كحب الله والذين آمنوا أشد حبا لله. That so this is here tells us that يعجبك قوله في الحياة الدنيا ويشهد الله على ما في قلبهم. The verses is telling us basically that you should not follow and take everything for granted or follow anybody blindly. Should always be looking for truth, and therefore Can you please mute everybody? So you will never be deceived because you're always going to ask for evidence, and and you're always looking for truth. So and nowadays we see so many Muslims are deceived left and right. Make sure that everybody is mute, please. So today many Muslims, including young Muslims, are deceived left and right to this extreme or to that extreme just because they follow somebody blindly, or they get deceived by what people say, like قال الله قال الرسول الحديث البخاري في مسلم, etc. So people will be intimidated, and then that should never be the case. That should never be the case, and we should always be critical and have that critical mind and never follow anybody or anything blindly. So then comes the alternative for that. If you want to really give yourself completely, it's to Allah, not to an individual or a group or anything. I can see contrast between the two. That someone who doesn't have a clear reference can be deceived, can follow someone blindly, can follow an ideology blindly, and between someone who is looking for the truth, and because of that they dedicate themselves completely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then that's very important, that this religion, it's not for people who will pick and choose, or to have that lukewarm iman. Yes, maybe when it is convenient. No, it requires that wholehearted entering in Silm or Islam wholeheartedly, and then says that the alternative to that is to follow the footsteps of Shaitan, as if there is nothing in between. It's either you're striving to be a good, devoted servant to Allah, or if you're not doing that, it doesn't mean that you're going to be there, but at least you are trying all the time, fixing things and improving things and adjusting and aligning yourself, or between following the footsteps of Shaitan. So, and then the emphasis on Silm is important, because really in Islam there is complete peace of mind. I know that people sometimes say Islam is peace, and people are laughing at that because they see all this terrorism committed in the name of Islam. But the true Islam is really guarantees peace, from the peace of mind to the global peace. Why? Because when you surrender completely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you align yourself with His rules that govern this universe, and that's the source of peace and happiness. And by the way, even non-Muslims who discover and leverage the rules that Allah has embedded on earth, they also reap the fruits of them in this life. And we see many successful societies because of that greater justice and etc. But the shortest and surest way to that is to follow the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَإِن زَلَلْتُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْكُمْ بَيِّنَاتٌ فَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. And while you're doing this, while you're striving in this path, you may every now and then fall in one of the traps of Shaitan, go into one of his exits, but the Quran is inviting you to recover quickly. Why? Because one, Allah is Aziz. Aziz is a name of power. So that's basically, it's encourage you to come back if you lost your way. And then Hakim, meaning that Allah knows what is best for you. So you'd better go back to the straight path because Allah is Hakim, the All-Wise, and knows what is best, and that's better for you. Even if this new path, this deviation, maybe you find it tempting in this life, but Allah is telling you, first of all, it's Aziz, so you have to be careful, and then Hakim, that's encouraging. So Targheeb and Tarheeb, to encourage you to go back to the straight path if you commit a mistake. And then the other warning, what are you waiting for if you are hesitant, if you didn't take this path, or if you deviate and continue in your deviation? Are you waiting for the day of judgment? Because that's the meaning. هل ينظرون إلا أن يأتيهم الله في ظلل من الغمام والملائكة وقضي الأمر. It's going to be too late, and we all know that this can happen at any time, and therefore we have to be always in that mood of pushing our limits and trying our best. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not ask you more than what you can, but asks you to do all that you can. All that you can to be that min ibadullah al-mukhlasin, the ones who are living for Allah and His cause. So, qudi al-amr, of course, if you're going to wait, you may find, because we know that life can end at any moment, where we may find ourselves in that situation when it is too late to make those corrections or fixing. And then, وإلى الله ترجع الأمور. So things will, everybody and everything will be returned to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then, سل بني إسرائيل كم آتيناهم من آية بينة ومن يبدل نعمة الله من بعد ما جاءته فإن الله شديد العقاب. 2:11. It says that Prophet asked the children of Israel, how many clear signs we brought them? If anyone alters Allah's blessings after he has received them, Allah is stern in punishment. So this is سل بني إسرائيل كم آتيناهم من آية بينة. Where this context? I mean, we're just talking about the people who deviated and didn't come back. And we talked to people who remained reluctant until it was over, until the day of judgment. So in this context, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us about the people who were assigned this mission before us. So that to know, one, to be aware, that's another warning, by the way. Another warning, if you don't answer the call, just look at Bani Israel, the people before you. كَمْ آتَيْنَاهُمْ مِنْ آيَةٍ بَيِّنَةٍ. I mean, gave them all the clear signs. وَمَنْ يُبَدِّلْ نَعْمَةَ اللَّهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْ. There is very beautiful touch here when it says that basically what Allah has assigned you to do in this life, this mission, and sticking to the straight path, it's not a burden, it's ni'mah, it's a blessing. That's what the Quran is saying. It's a blessing. وَمَنْ يُبَدِّلْ نَعْمَةَ اللَّهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْ. And now there is also strict warning, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ, stern in punishment. So you can see it's always incentives and warnings, so that to keep you always awake and always alert and always on the right track. And that's what feeds your spiritualities. It is this guidance plus the incentives plus the warnings. That's what keeps you really motivated and energized and empowered. So وَمَنْ يُبَدِّلْ نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ. As if Quran is telling us, those who deviate and don't come back, and those who do not surrender completely to Allah, and those who do not sign that deal with Allah, these are like Bani Israel, مَنْ يُبَدِّلْ نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْ. Somebody was given a chance and honor, and then they just chose to miss it. زُيِّنَ لِلَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا وَيَسْخَرُونَ مِنَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا فَوْقَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَاللَّهُ يَرْزُقُ مَن يَشَاءُ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. I mean, you can see also this is a continuity. So continuing along the same theme, the life of this world is made to seem glamorous to the disbelievers, and they laugh at those who believe. But those who are mindful of Allah will be above them on the day of resurrection. Allah provides immeasurably for whoever He pleases. طيب, what is this? زين الذين كفروا الحياة الدنيا ويسخرون من الذين آمنوا. We're still talking about the two categories and the two. So those who reject that honor, those who do not surrender completely, those who are focusing on this worldly life, living an empty life with no mission, with nothing, these, they laugh at you, trying to live by principles, living by living for a cause, living for a mission, etc. They can see you, they laugh at you as if you are missing this life or the glamorous things of this worldly life. وَيَسْخَرُونَ مِنَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us the right balance. وَالَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا فَوْقَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. طيب. Overall, it depends at the outcome on the hereafter. And I need to clarify this because there is a big misunderstanding here. So, فَمَنْ زُحْزِحَ عَنِ النَّارِ وَأُدْخِلَ الْجَنَّةَ فَقَدْ فَازَ. That's the criteria. Understand? الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا فَوْقَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. طيب. You are laughing at us today. On the day of judgment, we will see who's the winner, who's the successful. Right. So far, so good. It's basically, it depends on the overall, the outcome, who's the winner and who's the successful. But some Muslims have taken this to an extreme to mean that this life is not important. So we can fail, we can be losers, we can be whatever in this life because we are focusing on the hereafter. And that's a huge mistake. Why? Because part of your success in the hereafter, or a requirement for your success in the hereafter, is to do what you are supposed to do in this life. And part of that is to be all you can be, is to be strong and to be resourceful and to be successful and to perfect everything that you do. So there is a huge mistake there, or misconception, that Muslims, a good Muslim is someone who can sacrifice this life for the hereafter. That's not true. Allah will not be pleased with you if you don't try to be all you can be in this life, and if you don't seize all the opportunities that you are given to be strong, to be resourceful, so that you can do more for His cause, so you can contribute more to the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا فَوْقَهُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, we should correct that misconception. It doesn't mean that we have to choose, and because akhirah, the hereafter, is more important, so this life is not important at all, and we can afford to fail in it. No, that's not true. To succeed in the hereafter, you have to try to succeed in this life, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves strong believer more than a weak believer. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to leverage or to realize your potential and to maximize your contribution and your impact. So let's make sure that take that out of our mind and to correct it. Especially if you find an imam who's giving this message in Jumu'ah to people, to the crowd, try to approach them in a polite way and try to discuss, because that message has caused us a lot of damage. And it may, and not only we lag behind, but we are comfortable with that. Why? Because of this misconception that نحن are focusing on the hereafter, this life is not important. That's not true. والله يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب. كان الناس أمة واحدة فبعث الله النبيين مبشرين ومنذرين. طيب, كان الناس أمة واحدة, probably the more likely explanation is the beginning of humanity. Adam alayhi salam and his family. In the beginning there was only Ummah wahida, and then of course they increased in numbers, they became different, they went into different routes and different فبعث الله النبيين مبشرين ومنذرين, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent messengers to guide people. When people start to lose their ways, Allah sent messengers مبشرين ومنذرين. That's the job of prophets, and that's the job of their followers. It's encouraging people or showing people the way, encourage them to follow it, and discourage them or warn them from deviating. Mubashirina wa mundirin. It's that balance, showing the way, giving people the vision, the direction, the roadmap, encourage them, give them incentives to, of course, by example, first to take that route, and also discourage them and show them that the consequences in this life and thereafter of deviating from the path that Allah has chosen for you, and Allah knows better what is best for you and loves the best for you. So, and He is the all-wise, and so there is nothing that makes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell you to do something except it in your best interest. There is nothing else. And if He tells you to stay away from something, it is harmful, because Allah is in no need for anything from us, and things that are forbidden is not a punishment, and things that are prescribed are not also a burden. It's actually the other way around. And there is a level of happiness that you can never experience except when you have a noble mission in this life that you are carrying it day in, day out. You cannot buy that or purchase that with all the money in the world. There is a level of happiness when you are aligned completely, you know what you're supposed to do and you're doing it, and you are trying always to better understand and better fulfill the purpose of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are معرفة وإنفاذ مراد الله. معرفة وإنفاذ مراد الله. That's the essence of this deen. When you declare your shahada, you are dedicating yourself and your life to understand and fulfill the purpose of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وأنزل معهم الكتاب بالحق ليحكم بين الناس فيما اختلفوا فيه. So Allah 213. No, 213. 213. Mankind was a single community. Then Allah sent prophets to bring good news and warning, and with them He sent the scripture with the truth to judge between people in their disagreements. Ikhtilaf, disagreement, also another big misconception that we have to fix. Differences between people is very normal, very natural, and we should never try to suppress it completely. We should try to manage it. We should try to manage our differences. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that His guidance is meant to be the reference in what we disagree about. فيما اختلفوا فيه. So we don't agree. Let's go back and see what Quran has to say about this. Now, even then, we still may disagree because Quran doesn't have the interpretation. It's the Quran that was preserved, but the interpretation is just we are trying to understand it. So we may refer both of us to the Quran and see the verse, but we can have a different interpretation for it. And that's fine, as long as it is within a certain limit, as long as that ikhtilaf or differences does not turn into animosity or any disputes. It is still okay. I mean, Sahaba disagrees on many things, and there are so many essential things, and the major scholars of Islam disagree. So it's not the end of the world. All the attempts that you see nowadays in the Muslim world, in the Muslim community, to suppress differences or try to finish it is very silly, because it will never happen. People who are born in the same family, twin, and they go to the same school, then in the same neighborhood and etc. And they can be thinking differently. Yeah. So we have to keep this in mind, that if we have the proper intention, and if we really mean well and we want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we still can differ, but that difference is contained, is manageable. We accept each other, we respect each other, and we can even cooperate in other areas where we agree. وما اختلف الذين أوتوه من بعد ما جاءتهم بينات إلا بغيا بينهم. Now this is the bad differences or disagreements. The khilaf, Quran is telling us where it's coming from. So it says that it was only those to whom it was given who disagreed about it after clear signs had come to them because of rivalry between them. بغيا بينهم. The word baghi can mean envy, can mean hatred, bigotry, greed. All of these can follow under baghi. That's what turns that differences into takes it out of control. So وما اختلف, that's the bad ones. But the other one, ولا يزالون مختلفين إلا من رحم ربك ولذلك خلقهم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that we will be different. We will never be the same, thinking the same way. And if you find a group of people who think exactly the same way, like copies of one another, there is something wrong there. These people means they're following somebody. They're not using their brains. Because the moment you use your brain, we use our brains, we're going to be different. We're going to differ on things. But there is good differences and there is bad ones. The good difference is the one that is contained, the one that doesn't prevent mutual acceptance and mutual trust and even cooperation for the common good. Because we may differ on 1, 2, 3, 4 points, but we agree on so many others. So let's focus on the areas of agreement and work on them. شاهد الله الذين آمنوا لما اختلفوا فيه من الحق بإذنه. So if the differences really become between truth and falsehood, Allah will guide believers to the straight path or to the truth. والله يهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. These verses of Allah يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب. الله يهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. إن الله على كل شيء قدير. All these transcendent attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are meant to reinforce the tawheed. Because remember, Islam is essentially, it's a religion of tawheed. It's about the key thing in Islam is the relationship between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that will translate into living for Him, for Allah and His cause. So these verses in Allah, شديد العقاب, Allah يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب, and all the ends of the verses, the ending, the verses they end with, lots of verses end with attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are meant to reinforce our relationship with Allah and Tawheed, because these transcendent attributes, يعني الصفات المطلقة, يعني العدل المطلق والحكمة المطلقة والعلم المطلق والقدرة المطلقة, يعني يفعل ما يشاء, يخلق ما يشاء, يعني الله على كل شيء قدير, يرزق من يشاء بغير حساب, يهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. All of these bring us closer to Allah from different angles. One time we are seeking His forgiveness, another time we are avoiding His punishment, another time we are seeking His guidance, His protection. All of these are meant to reinforce that Tawheed and our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then comes the verse that is also very strong. Of course, remember يهدي فهدى الله الذين آمنوا المختلف فيه من الحق بإذنه, because you know that there are a lot of crooked paths or ways and there is a straight path. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one time he was sitting with the companions and he drew so many crooked paths and then he drew a straight path. and he told the companions that there is shaitan on any of these exits, trying to get you out of the straight path. And he recited, وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطِ مُسْتَقِيمًا فَاتَّبِعُوهُ وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السُّبُلَ فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِهِ. طيب. أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَنْ تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَّاءُ وَزُلْزِلُوا حتى يقول الرسول والذين آمنوا معه متى نصر الله ألا إن نصر الله قريب. يعني it's really an extreme يعني difficult times. Do you suppose that you will enter the garden without first having suffered like those before you? They were afflicted by misfortune and hardship, and they were so shaken that even their messenger and the believers with him cried, when will Allah's help arrive? And when the messenger started crying, saying that, it means things have reached a level, an extreme. And truly, Allah's help is near. What is this verse? Remember I said that the Quran is meant to prepare the Muslim individual and the Muslim community for that mission. So Quran is about tarbiyah and preparation, training, preparation, self-development, mentoring, building that individual and that community. Now how the individual and the community are built? They are built either by what you learn and you apply, or by the life experiences. There are lessons that we can learn only from life experience. You cannot learn theoretically, or you can, even if you learn theoretically, they will be reinforced and rooted through life experiences. So Quran, in the same context, remember those who dedicate themselves completely to Allah and those who make that deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, udkhulu fi as-silmi kafa, that's what they should expect. They should expect that it's not going to be easy. Why? Because, and this is something that we missed big time in our very superficial understanding of Islam, that Islam is essentially a message of change and the movement of change. And change has never been easy, never. You come to a society and you try to change the mindsets of people, their behavior, their interaction, their priority. It has never been easy. So, يا بني أقم الصلاة وأمر بالمعروف وانه عن المنكر واصبر على ما أصابك. If you're going to take this mission and embrace it and try to fulfill it, you have to expect resistance. It's not going to be a paved or rosy path or paved path. So, أم حسبتم أن تدخلوا الجنة. Do you think that you're claiming, because this is a big claim to say that you are servant of Allah and you're carrying His mission, the mission of prophets, now you're carrying it. So that's a claim. Now that claim is tested. And you're claiming that you are really serious in your pursuit of heaven, which Rasul said about it, that is, that this is expensive. There is never a place in the Quran that says Jannah is cheap. Actually, إن الله اشترى من المؤمنين أنفسهم وأموالهم بأن لهم الجنة. The verse is fixing the price for heaven is that people who dedicate everything. إن الله اشترى من المؤمنين أنفسهم وأموالهم بأن لهم الجنة. So now continuing along the same line is saying that those who dedicate their lives or claim they're doing this, and claim they signed the deal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they are serious in their pursuit of heaven, that's what they have to expect. Why? Because you're coming to change things. There is always, people are benefiting from injustice. And Islam is a mission and the message of justice and the message of dignity and message of accountability and message of transparency and message of, and there are people who don't want that. There are people who are taking advantage of the lack of that justice and lack of that. And people in Quraysh did not oppose the Rasul because of the idols it's not because he was calling them to pray or salah or tawheed. They could have managed, they could have taken all of that. But because they realized from day one that this society in which there are privileged families and there are oppressed people and there are slaves, etc. And here we go, there is a message that is coming to say everybody is equal and justice and etc. So that's why they fought him hard, because they understood. I mean, I always say that, and I believe that Abu Jahl understood Islam exactly the same like Abu Bakr and Umar in terms of understanding. That's why they took it very seriously, wholeheartedly, and the other fought it wholeheartedly, because they both understood where this is leading. They did not take it the way we are taking Islam, in a shallow way that basically it's about praying, fasting, not eating pork. No, that's not. They got it from day one. And remember the shepherd, the third who, what kind of knowledge he had in a shepherd in the desert at that time, disconnected completely from the civilized world, from the Roman and from the Persians and the shepherd, Rasul is asking, he asked the Rasul, what are you calling for? And the Rasul said, I'm asking people to say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammad Rasulullah. And imagine this happening nowadays. That's so easy, so simple. Why people are making big deal out of it? But because that shepherd understood, mastered the Arabic language, and immediately figured out where this is going to lead. He told him, Wallahi la tuqatilannaka al-Arab wal-Ajam. You have to expect everybody is going to fight you over this. They're coming to strip privileged families and tribes and races and whatever, and want to make everybody equal and everybody surrender to Allah. No, expect everybody to fight. So whatever that shepherd has, can see it here. أم حسبتم أن تدخلوا الجنة ولما يأتكم مثل الذين خلوا من قبلكم مستهم البأساء والضراء وزلزلوا. They were tested to a point that the messenger himself, talking about previous people, the messenger himself was asking, I mean, when is your help is coming? When is going to arrive? Because we reached the limit. متى نصر الله? ألا إن نصر الله قريب. Allah is promising them that the help and support from Allah is near. Near whom? Near those who fulfill the requirements. إن تنصروا الله ينصركم. I remember one time giving the khutbah here, and I was explaining this verse, and somebody came to me after Jumu'ah, says, Jazakallahu khairan, you helped me understanding something that was puzzling me all the time. I said, what? He said, so the help from Allah is conditional. That's why we're not getting it today. I said, yeah. He said, because I always was puzzled why Muslims are in horrible shape and things are very bad, etc. Now I understand. You're telling us that Allah does not help Muslims because they are Muslims, but unless they meet the requirements. Say yes, unless they fulfill the requirements. So now I want to clarify something. By the way, we accept these things in our life. We don't accept it when it comes to Islam. We want something cheap. But in our life, when you want a high degree, when you want a job, when you want something that is really, and you're ready to make all the sacrifices for it, and to take all the tests and etc., because you value it and you think that it's worth that sacrifice. And I see people going to medical school, they start from this pre-med year. This pre-med year is a hell. I'm teaching in pre-med program. For 11 months, people have no life in, and they have to they have to acquire a solid science foundation, and they are non-science majors. They never done any science. Many of them, they never done any science except probably in high school. And then in 11 months, they have to do that. So, but why they are making that thing? Because they have that dream. And then when they go to medical school, they tell us that everything they suffered in pre-med is nothing compared to medical school. So we accept to sacrifice and to study hard and to do whatever it takes to earn something that we value. But when it comes to heaven and the good pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we think that it is cheap, or we want to take it for nothing, or take it even for granted sometimes. Now, ibtila is something that I need to explain, because that's another huge misconception among Muslims. First of all, we should never ask for it. Totally wrong. Muslims, it's not like if you find yourself in a tough situation, or in that you just say that's ibtila. No. Shouldn't ask for it. This trial or tribulation, try to avoid it by all means. Legitimate, of course, means of talking. And then the misconception is that it's not because you are going through trial and tribulation that you are on the right path, or you're doing the right thing. It might be because of mistakes. We have seen some Islamic groups and Islamic movements over history. Every time they go through trial and tribulation, they immediately may blame it, or they never take it as an opportunity to revisit and review. Yes, there are oppressive regimes, but maybe you gave them ammunition. Maybe you made mistakes. Just go back and revisit and reevaluate and make adjustments. So, ibtila, or trial and tribulations in life, does not excuse you from being responsible for results, whether individual level or family or collective, anything. So let's not use it as a scapegoat that you commit all mistakes in life, and then you find yourself in trouble, and then you blame it on Allah. No, that's not. So that idea of that we are not responsible for results is very bad, and it has to be fixed. We are responsible for results, and Quran tells us exactly the opposite. It tells us that whatever happens to you is because of yourself. Now, if you go back and you find you did everything right, now Rasul was tested in Mecca and even in Medina. If you go back and you find yourself, you are on the right path, you are doing everything right, etc., then you accept whatever beyond your control. But you cannot always keep saying that we're not responsible for results. Results are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if things go bad, it's just because we are victims, and that's not true. At least that's not always true, or that's not necessary true. So we're going to hold ourselves accountable for results, and then reevaluate and do the self-assessment or the evaluations. And then if you find something wrong, try to fix it. Now, if by chance you find yourself you did everything right, which is not really very likely, and everything was done right at that end of the day, because of that message that you are pursuing, you find yourself like Bilal ibn Rabah or Ala Yasir in Mecca, etc. That's beyond your control. That's not something that you can, that's beyond your control. That's the ibtila that you have to accept. But you should not expect victory before you fulfill everything you do. And you should not accept or call it ibtila, trial and tribulation, except if it is beyond your control. But if it is the result of a mistake, then call things by their name. That's what the Quran teaches us. When Muslims were defeated in the second part of Uhud, Quran did not come and tell them that's okay, it was ibtila. No, it called it failure, and called it disaster. Okay, مش نكسة. Wasn't like the 67 humiliating defeat, which they called it just نكسة, like misstep. No, the Quran calls it disaster, مصيبة. And حتى إذا فشلتم, and then قلتم أنها قلوب من عند أنفسكم. You have only yourself to blame. That's nowadays Muslims, what they call this. They call it what? جلد الذات. You are, it's and you are too hard or too harsh on yourself. That's not true. That's the Quran methodology, is to call things by their name and to take responsibility for what happened. And that doesn't mean pessimism. It's exactly the other way around. Those who try to gloss over reality, these are the people who are running away from it. Those who confront reality are people who are determined to fix it. So it's not true that when you see somebody telling you the truth as is, إن الرائد لا يكذب أهله, don't tell him that you are pessimistic and you are spreading pessimism. That's not true. Because the first step in fixing our situation is to recognize it and accept responsibility for it. Now we're reaping today the fruits of what we have done before and what we have failed to do. So make sure that concept of ibtila is like concept of tawakkul. Concept of tawakkul, relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when? After you do everything you can to take care of the rest. You exercise tawakkul before that becomes tawakkul. That becomes complacency. Not putting your trust in the hands of Allah. Victory comes, or the extra help from Allah comes when you reach your limit. You do everything you can. And then ibtila, only the part that is beyond your control. It's not like some people created a mess in their personal life or in their family life, and then they call it that they're victims. And no, you're not victims. You're not a victim. You inflicted on yourself. So keep that in mind. It's very important. سألونك ماذا ينفقون قل ما أنفقتم من خير. It's part of dedicating your life to Allah comes spending. قل ما أنفقتم من خير فللوالدين والأقربين واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل وما تفعلوا من خير فإن الله به عليم. Spending, it's a major thing in Islam. Spending very generously. Spending almost everything that is above your means. Spending. They ask you, what is it? They ask you what they should give. They ask the Prophet what they should give. Say, whatever you give should be for parents, close relatives, orphans, the needy, and travelers. Allah is well aware of whatever good you do. In fact, spending is a very good exercise of self-purification and self-development, tarbiyah and tazkiyah. That's for your heart, so that your heart will be always attached to Allah and His cause, and you will never become money worshipper. When you write a check, or you use your credit card, or you give money, it's basically making yourself above the money and bringing money back to where it belongs, which is a tool, and it should never become a goal. It is a tool, and as long as it is a tool, Allah wants you to have as much of it as possible. As long as it doesn't become a goal and you don't become money worshiper and does not distract you from your mission. It is meant to empower you to be able to do more for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is tarbiyah and tazkiyah for the individual. It is a blessing for the money. The money that you give away makes the rest of the money pure and put barakah in it. Blessing. And دعوا مرضاكم بالصدقة. You never know what you spend for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You never know, because you know that please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You never know what you're going to get in return in this life and in the after. It might be something bad that was coming your way and it will be deflected. So very important is to spend. Basically, the reference should be not doing something. The reference should be to try to spend almost everything that is more than your needs. I know that's a standard that is not easy to reach, but that should be the standard. Standard that spending, and of course spending has a number of there are a number of options. Spending to advance the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, spending for those who need, etc. So that's one. Second, spending, of course, if you get rid of greed, that will open the door for true happiness. You can never be truly happy if you are money worshiper, because you will never have enough. The Rasul tells us that if you have the equivalent of the mountain of Uhud of gold, you will want to have the second one. So that it's endless. So when you control your greed or you suppress it by giving, that will open the door for the true happiness. So happiness, your spirituality, blessing for the money, and then happiness in the society. The society in which people are, there is solidarity and there is spending, that society will become very cohesive and very strong, and nobody is left behind. Much less crimes, much less drugs, much less everything. And we can see it today. We can see it every year. There is a report that says the happiest nations or societies in the world. Almost all the years are the Scandinavian countries that come first. Finland, Denmark, Norway, etc. Why? Because in those countries there is real social justice. And there is a dignified life that is guaranteed for people. It's not socialism, because that has failed miserably. But it is not also out of control capitalism. That's the happiest societies. They are closing jails. While other countries are building, they are closing jails. And the level of crime is negligible. Nothing. So where is it coming from? Of course, it's not religious because of the tax structure and because of, but there is really a lesson for us that now, if we find ourselves in a society that are not doing that, or a country, I think we should follow the spending and spend generously, and you don't have to give to the state other than what is required by law, but you can give, and Quran is telling you whom to give. It's your circles. Each one of us belongs to a number of circles. الوالدين والأقربين. So these are your cousins. These are the ones that you are aware of, that probably nobody else is aware of their situation, like you. So it is your prime responsibility. Of course, your parents, there is nothing you can do to thank your parents enough. I mean, if you take your salary or your income and give it to them, even though that's not required, but you're not going to thank them enough for what you have, for what they have done here. And I always say, when it comes to parents, you are paying back debts, you are not doing favor. You're paying back major debt, because who made you? After Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's your parents. It's your parents, you came to this world helpless. You can do nothing. You cannot even feed yourself. You cannot clean yourself. You can do nothing. And then they took you from that situation to where you are now. Through all those stages. And then sponsoring you in your education. Elementary education, and then high school, etc. Who did this? So that's parents. And then al-aqrabeen, again, aqrabeen, because that's the normal thing. Usually, your cousins or relatives, you are probably more aware than anybody else about their situation. If you don't help them, maybe nobody else will, especially if they are people who are, they don't ask and they don't beg. And they are those who conceal their poverty and their need. Unless you help them, probably nobody else will. So that's very important. And remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it the right of your relatives in your money. Now we want to be serious and follow the religion. That's what it says. وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَ حَقَّهُ. It's not helping. It's give them their rights. Those your relatives, they have rights in your money. Maybe one way or another, they contributed to where you are now. But regardless of what is the reason behind this, because we can only guess the reason or the wisdom behind anything that Allah prescribes, but the verse in Surah Al-Isra, very clear. وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ, which came immediately after the long verse about the parents. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ بِالْوَالِدَيْنِ وَآتِ ذَا الْقُرْبَى حَقَّهُ. So gonna have to be أقربين ليتامى. These are the weakest people in societies. These are the people, the orphans. Masakin, of course, those who have nothing to spend or don't have even something to eat, or masakin. وابن السبيل. Ibn al-Sabil, probably it's a category that is not there anymore, or at least it's much, much less frequent because things have changed. It's the one who traveler and was completely disconnected from his family and has no money and really is totally helpless. Yeah. That's not, now it's not common because nowadays people, they have their debit cards and credit cards, and then they don't need cash to carry with them. And then unless an extreme case of somebody probably lost his wallet or his car was stolen, whatever. But these are now that category became much less common. Yeah. And look at how the verse concludes. Again, it's always, that's what you're supposed to do, and then comes the incentive. وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ. But whatever good you do, Allah is aware of it. Allah is watching. This is for a believer, it's a major incentive. It's both, by the way. It helps you restrain yourself, because you should be ashamed of yourself. Allah is watching. And there are things you will not do something in front of somebody you respect. You're going to do it in front of Allah. But also it's an incentive to do good. Because, at work, when the boss is watching, bosses around, people try to do their best. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ. That's really big incentive on spending. Because spending is not easy. People, the greed and to be worried about the future, and shaitan will come to you and say, keep this money, you're going to need it, your children are going to need it, don't spend it, etc. So it's not easy. It requires a lot of incentive. فَإِنَّ تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ. We go back to qital, fighting. كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ. It's amazing, wallahi. وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ, and I found it very, very interesting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling again, fighting in Islam, it's not a principle, it's not required, it's not something great to do. No. It's fighting is ordained for you, though you dislike it. Beautiful, Allah. كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ tells you that the Quran is very realistic, and practical religion doesn't require you to become an angel. It's something that you don't like. And he's talking to Sahaba. It's not something, Surah Al-Anfal, وَتَوَدُّونَ أَنَّ غَيْرَ ذَاتِ الشَّوْكَةِ تَكُونُ لَكُمْ. It's normal. People don't like it. But also I can see it from another angle. It's like, when you are about to die, let's say you are in the desert and die out of hunger or thirst, and then there is only a dead animal, and you're going to have to eat it to survive. So you're going to do it very reluctantly. You're not going to enjoy it. So qital is meant to be like this. I don't know where these people, some Muslims, try to turn qital. It's like something that is a pleasure or something that should enjoy it. It's not. It's a necessity, and it has to be treated as a necessity. وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ. It's not something good. It's not something great. It's not something that you should be looking for and travel across the world just to fight. It is not that. All of this is nonsense. All of this are ridiculous things that are very strange to Islam. وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ. It's something that you dislike, but is necessary, then it is necessary. I mean, you are living in this country in very peaceful, and somebody has attacked this country. And people are going to go and fight and push back in. So, وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ. I like really this touch. يعني. وَعَسَى أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. وَعَسَى أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. This is, by the way, very, very fundamental verse. It was also وَعَسَى أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَيَجْعَلْ لَهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. So the meaning is the same. Okay. You may dislike something although it is good for you, or like something although it is bad for you. Allah knows and you do not. This is general. It's not really limited to fighting or anything, but in general, there are things that you don't like. And by the way, a lot of things that are good for you, usually they're not convenient. There are things that you may not like, and they are in your best interest. And there are things that you may like, but they are harmful for you. Like, what is the reference? The reference Allah. Because Allah knows. If we rely on ourselves, we may be confused, or we may be deceived. And we may end up doing something that looks good, but it is harmful for us. Or failing to do something that is good for us, but it's just because it is not convenient. The reference is Allah who knows better. Allah ya'lamu wa antum la ta'lamun. So to be sure, follow the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because He knows. And He knows exactly what is good for you and what is not good for you. In this life and in the hereafter. The whole package together. And then يسألونك عن الشهر الحرام قتال فيه قل قتال فيه كبير وصد عن سبيل الله وكفر به والمسجد الحرام وإخراج أهل منه أكبر عند الله والفتنة أكبر من القتل ولا يزالون يقاتلونكم حتى يردوكم عن دينكم إن استطاعوا ومن يرتد منكم عن دينه فيموت وهو كافر فأولئك خبطت أعمالهم في الدنيا والآخرة وأولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. This verse shows the importance of knowing the Quran and the Seerah together, because if you don't know in which context this verse was revealed, you may not probably fully understand it. Let's read the translation and then try to reflect. They ask you, Prophet, about fighting in the prohibited month. This is Ashur al-Hurum. There are months that were even before Islam, that the Arabs, they don't fight in them. They are total peace. Say fighting in that month is a great offense. But to bear others from Allah's path, to disbelieve in Him, prevent access to the sacred mosque, and expel its people are still greater offenses in Allah's eyes. Persecution is worse than killing. They will not stop fighting you, believers, until they make you revoke your faith, if they can. If any of you revoke your faith and die as disbelievers, your deeds will come to nothing in this world and thereafter, and you'll be inhabitants of the fire. This is a very specific incident. Rasulullah sent an expedition in one of the months of Hurum, Ashur al-Hurum, Jumada al-Thani al-Akhirah expedition, and then this expeditions, the Rasul kept sending those expeditions all the time. It was so very smart leadership. At that time, there was no radars, there was no electronics. So the only intelligence is a human intelligence. So Rasul building a small community, new nation in Medina, and of course everybody in the Arabian Peninsula, everybody attacks everybody. You can attack. So he was sending these expeditions to always gather information and try to deter or send a sign of strength to deter people from and tribes from attacking the Medina. So this, unfortunately, they get entangled with some people, even though it was meant as expedition. They thought it was still the last day of the month before the Rajab, before the month al-Haram, and there was killing. So it was big at that time. Before Islam and after Islam, it was really big to fight in those months. So there was a lot, they made big deal out of it, especially Quraysh, and how come you Muslims violate this rule, and felt very embarrassed, especially those who were involved in the fighting. They felt very embarrassed. So Quran was revealed to tell them, yes, fighting in those months is big. يسألونك عن الشهر الحرام قتال فيه قل قتال فيه كبير. It is still, the rule is still there. It's still bad to fight on those days, and you shouldn't. But then goes to qualify it, to say that what Quraysh has done is bigger than that, which is صد عن سبيل الله, to prevent people from worshipping Allah, and كفر به, to reject Allah and Masjid al-Haram, to abuse the Masjid al-Haram, and to kick people out of it, because that's what they did to the Rasul and his companions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that's bigger offense. So these people, they shouldn't play honest now because of that mistake, because Muslims did not do it deliberately. They thought it was the last day of the previous month, and it turns out that was the first day of the month al-Haram. So Quran say, even though that's wrong and it should not happen, and we should maintain that rule of the sacred months, but what Quraysh has done, the ones who are complaining now, was even bigger offense. وَالْفِتْنَةُ أَكْبَرُ مِنَ الْقَتْلِ. Confusing people, deceiving them, misleading people, etc. It's even bigger than fighting or killing. I mean, of course, it doesn't mean that, because most of these fitna, they lead even to more killings if they are not contained or controlled. It's not like encouraging fighting or killing. And then, of course, says that these people are going to continue to fight you, whether fight you with propaganda or fight you real, until they manage to deviate you or make you lose your way or get out of the straight path. حتى يردوكم عن دينكم ما استطاعوا. And then, of course, Quran warns Muslims who will do that, who will fall in the trap and revoke their faith just because of the pressure or fighting or propaganda. And then the verse continued to say, إن الذين آمنوا والذين هاجروا وجاهدوا في سبيل الله أولئك يرجون رحمة الله والله غفور رحيم, because the companions felt very bad and were very embarrassed, and they were really worried because of what they have done, and this may be. So Quran says, telling them that, but those who have believed, migrated, and striven for Allah's cause, it is they who can look forward to Allah's mercy. Allah is most forgiving and merciful. People did not do this thing deliberately. The whole thing was meant to be expedition. They were not even meant to fight, but they found themselves fighting, and they thought it is the last day of the month before the Muharram, before Rajab, before the month that is where fighting is forbidden. So Quran is basically comforting them, because they did not, their intention was good, and because they were dealing with people who have caused much more harm. Of course, that's not a license to fight or to kill. Fighting has to be kept always very restricted in terms as a necessity. And as I said, the Quran, the Islamic guidelines for fighting and for wars are stricter than the international law. Stricter in when it can happen and how it can happen. So the notion of just wars that is accepted by all nations as an international law, those who understand Islam properly realize that fighting is much more restricted in terms of the conditions or when it can be it can happen and how it can be conducted. I think we will stop here. Actually, unless let's leave the time if there is questions or comments. Otherwise, we can continue the next 2 verses at least.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Al-Nusri.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Earlier in the lecture, I'm just trying to complete my notes. You said forbidden things are not a punishment, and things that are prescribed are to benefit us. And then you said something about it's the opposite. Or can you repeat that thought?
It's basically whatever Allah has prescribed, and we have to be very certain about this, like no even shred of a doubt. Anything that Allah has prescribed is in our best interest, both in this life and in the hereafter. Whether you see it or you don't see it, whether you see the benefit or you don't see it, it may not be convenient, but it is in your best interest. And I said usually things that are in our best interest are not convenient. I mean, working hard and studying hard is not convenient. And vice versa. Things that are forbidden are harmful, even if they are beautified or they are tempting. Because Allah has forbidden it, it's harmful. Because there is no other reason why Allah will forbid us from doing something, unless it is harmful. I mean, the all-wise, the all-knowing, He loves the best for us, and He knows what is best for us. So when He tells us not to do, it's like when you talk to your child. Your child may not see it, and he may see that you are depriving him from something, or you are putting burden on him, but you're seeking his best interest. And then maybe when he grow up, will realize that. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the best for us and knows what is best. So when we pursue His pleasure, we will find ourselves doing favor to ourselves in this life and in hereafter. So the key, اتباع رضوان الله. If you pursue the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you find yourself in the path of happiness and success in both lives.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for this lecture today. I have like a little comment about the meaning of zakat when we talked about the infaq, which is the spending, and infaq, which is everything. So the meaning of zakat has like 2 meanings at the same time. In Arabic, zakka yuzakki, which means purify and grow up or increase something. So يزكو ينمو. So that's what is kind of purification, but at the same time you add something to yourself. And that's why when you give a charity, when you're trying to train yourself to give all the time, so especially the money, because money is one of the what's called like شيء وتحبون المال حبا جما, which means something instinctively we love it so much than any other thing else. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala يقول ومن يوق شح نفسه فأولئك هم المفلحون أيضا. So whoever he protects himself from the shih, which is the stingy or something like that. I'm not sure exactly is it the
Envy and greed, yeah.
yes, exactly. So whoever protects himself from the shuh, أولئك المفلحون. Those is the winner. Exactly. So subhanallah. So الزكاة دائما أعلقها. So I try to link it to this two meaning at the same time. Yazku, which means what's called something increase
To grow.
and yes, purify and grow at the same time. Subhanallah. And also when you talked about وعسى أن تكرهوا شيئا ويجعل الله فيه خيرا كثيرا in سورة النساء, so after الطلاق. So but the thing that also الحديث النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تتمنوا لقاء العدو. So the fighting or الحرب is something like exception. It's not like necessity. That's why the struggling is something else. That's all is linked right now. جزاك الله خير. Thank you for this. بارك الله فيك, sir.
وياكم الحمد لله. جزاك الله خير. So good point.
Assalamu alaikum.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
If I can ask Mr. Hugh, he's with us right now, and hopefully we can talk a little bit about choosing a judge for the Supreme Court. Is Mr. Hugh with us? Yep. Mr. Hugh looks like he's not listening. Mr. Hugh?
Maybe he's muted.
Yeah. It's my question.
There we go.
Oh, Mr. Hugh with us. Hey, how are you, Mr. Hugh?
I'm well.
How are
The
you?
question, and hopefully Dr. Suhail, we can talk about this issue. See, I am Muslim. I have a problem with liberal judge in the Supreme Court. And the same time looks like with this election, I will have problem with the conservative judge. How you can deal with it, Mr. Hugh, yourself right now? I'd like to hear your opinion about it.
Well, I thought that RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, was a liberal judge, and I'm very much in favor of the things that she has done. So I was very sad to see her die. I thought she was a tremendous example in her personal life and in her legal life of what it means to be an American, and to have a love and care for all the people in the United States. I don't know much about the nominee for Justice, Amy, whatever her name is. I read a little bit about her. But the thing is, the Constitution of the United States says that the President has the right to appoint a nominee to a vacancy in the Supreme Court, and the Senate can affirm it. So President Trump has the right to do that. And we really don't have, there's no vote by the people on the qualifications for that judge. It just basically says that the president can appoint whomever he or she would like. I'm hoping that this judge who is being appointed will honor the rule of law and protect the rule of law in the United States. I think we've gotten away from that. So I'm very hopeful that she's apparently a very religious person, a Catholic, and I hope that she will bring in God's wisdom to her position on the Supreme Court. I really can't say much beyond that. I don't know her that well. You and I differ probably in terms of what we want in terms of the justice. I would certainly like someone who's more liberal, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but I just hope that this new appointee, if she is approved by the Senate, has a love for the rule of law as her religion would prescribe.
If the Supreme Court has decision against your belief in the Christianity, what it means to you? Do you have any problem with that?
Well, of course I do. Of course I do. But there are some things that we can change and some that we cannot. Dr. Ghannouchi was talking about those things, that we work to change those things that we can, and we leave to God those things that we cannot change. And the nominations to the Supreme Court would be in that category. There's not much that I can do to change those. I can talk to my congressman. I can write letters to the president. But there's it's really out of my hands here.
Thank you, Mr. Ayub. Thanks a lot.
I'm sorry I don't have a fuller answer, a more satisfying answer for you.
Dr. Ghannouchi, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Dr. Ghannouchi, I want to hit on something you said earlier in the conversation about people giving money and helping others and so forth. What do you think about, I always, when I drive, I see those people on street corners who looks, for the most part, looks pretty terrible as far as really, you can tell they really need help. They look pretty awful, and مثل in Arabic جار عليهم الزمن, most of them. What do you think about giving them money? Does it count as sadaqah or zakat? Although we know that they are not they don't even have a religion. We don't know, and really it does not matter, whether they have religion, they believe in Islam or Christianity or Judaism, whatever. What do you think? Is it okay to give them money to help them out, and does it count as sadaqah or zakat?
I think, first of all, charity has nothing to do with religion, so it's a human thing, even in Islam. Never specify that to give only to people who have religion or to Muslims, so those who are in need. I prefer giving through institutions, and they can manage, because you have no way to know who really is in need, or what he's going to do with that money. So I prefer giving to people or to institutions. And for those who are in the street, and the way I do it, and I think that's what I recommend, is if they need food, I buy them food. We had a number of them sometimes in my way to the university, and there are a number of food stores around, or sometimes they are in front of those like Subway or anything. And they always be much more comfortable buying them something to eat rather than giving them money in their hands.
I understand that, but sometimes, some of them have mental illness and they don't even probably know or where to go, and they just, roam the streets around, and they really need help because of their mental illness. I truly believe that some of them do have some mental illness. So my question, let me rephrase the question. My intention, and my intention is giving them money as sadaqah. Does that count for me as a sadaqah or not?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you very much.
And if anything, helping someone who's in need is a sadaqah. Actually, it's not even money. Anything that you do to help someone is part of charity. So charity is mainly money, but volunteering is charity, teaching people, and anything that you do to help others is an act of charity.
Okay, Jazakallah khair. That was very good.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Ghannouchi. Thank you for the lecture today. My analysis of what you said is that when you look at these verses, they mostly speak about tolerance, exercising patience, and acceptance of our differences. But unfortunately, even looking at what's happening right now in our country, just shows how much insensitive and intolerance we have about one another, and especially the issues of justice for minority group. So I ask myself, the verse that Prophet says when the Prophet he grieves when he sees our suffering, and right now when you look at what's happening across the world, is all this suffering are caused by our own hands, our own actions, our own inactions. So where are we heading? what more can be done? Like even the appointment maybe of the incoming Supreme Court for the minority, they're scared, and of course they have a right to be scared, looking at all these rules that have happened in the political environment right now, and the impact that it has caused to most people. So like, how are we supposed to interpret this, and what can we take, and especially for the American people now that they're heading for the election, what is the way forward?
Actually, you raised 2 points. One is specific, which is about this Supreme Court appointment. And I don't believe that in this country there is any single appointment or single institution. Even the president himself, there is a limit on what they can do. I mean, this country does not allow extremism in any direction, neither conservative or liberal. The pendulum has always comes back to the middle, even when it is pushed to one limit. And we have seen that society is so strong, and the civic institutions, and there is check and balance. And it doesn't mean it is perfect, but it means that even if it goes in the direction too far, usually the pendulum is pushed back to the middle. And that's why there is hardly any in the history of the United States a president or a leader who is really extremely conservative or extremely liberal. Usually they are not tolerated. So I'm not really worried about these things, because again, the system does not, puts a lot of limits, and then the society itself is, society itself can push back. Now, the other question is more general, requires probably more time, but the key to this is the famous saying that think globally and act locally. Yes, you can be thinking about the whole country and injustice in it, and even the whole world. But at the end of the day, you have to work in your circle or circles. You belong to a number of circles. That's your responsibility. Whether it is your relatives, whether it is the neighborhood, whether it is the workplace, whether it is your network on the social media, this is your circle. These are your circles that you are responsible for. You can think you can pray for people all over the world, but there is hardly anything you can do to them, except probably praying or probably helping financial or donating. But we have to keep that balance, because a lot of times we get carried away by focusing on thinking about issues that we can do nothing about them. And sometimes that becomes a substitute for doing what we are supposed to do. So we keep ourselves busy talking about all issues in the world, and then we do nothing about them. And then we abandon or neglect our immediate responsibilities that we have to take care of. So think globally, yes, follow what's going on, and the Muslims and the humanity at large and their society, etc. But at the end of the day, focus on what is it that you can do, first of all, to develop yourself into a role model and try to be all you can be. And then what is it that you can contribute, and what kind of impact you can have on people. So that's the best balance or formula.
Thank you, Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Suhail. If nobody has any question.
طيب وإياكم إن شاء الله.